England, 1857. The letter arrived on a gray March morning, bringing the kind of news that Edmund Blackwood had always known would come, but never admitted to expecting. Lord Blackwood, we regret to inform you that creditors demand full payment of Wintermere Hall's debts within 60 days, or the property will be seized and auctioned to settle the debts. The total amount is £18,000. We await your response. Sincerely, Hartley & Sons. Edmund crushed the paper between his fingers, feeling the weight of 300 years of ancestral legacy crushing his shoulders. Outside, rain lashed against Wintermere's windows like tears he wouldn't allow himself to shed. His father had squandered the family fortune on gambling and disastrous investments before dying, leaving him at 32 years old with an empty title and a property on the brink of collapse. 60 days. 2 damned months. My lord. Pemberton's voice, his lawyer, cut through the oppressive silence of the study. The man adjusted his glasses, uncomfortable. There is a possibility I must mention, though it's delicate. Edmund raised his eyes, too tired for hope, too young to give up completely. Isabella Montfort, Pemberton continued, nervously flipping through papers. Daughter of Sir Marcus Montfort, the textile magnate. She inherited everything when he passed away last year. 25 years old, unmarried, no suitors. Her fortune is considerable. £50,000, perhaps more. Edmund felt something bitter rise in his throat. And why would a wealthy heiress remain unmarried, Pemberton? She has a reputation, my lord. They say she's difficult, too intelligent, too opinionated. She's refused every marriage proposal she's received. 7, I've heard. Gentlemen find her intimidating. Intimidating. Edmund almost laughed. A woman with brains and backbone who dared to have her own opinions. In another life, he would have admired that. In this one, he only saw a solution. Where can I find her? There will be a ball at the Somerset residence in the coming days. I hear she'll be in attendance. Edmund looked through the window at Wintermere, the towers his great-grandfather had built, the gardens his mother had cultivated, the legacy he'd promised to preserve when his father died, looking into his eyes, begging forgiveness. 60 days to save everything, or lose it forever. Prepare my formal attire, he said, hating every word that left his mouth. I'm going to court Miss Montfort. The decision was made. Edmund Blackwood, descendant of a noble lineage, would propose marriage to a woman he'd never seen, for money he desperately needed, to save a legacy he couldn't let die. May God forgive him, because he would never forgive himself. Edmund recognized Isabella Montfort the instant he saw her cross the Somerset ballroom, not because she was the most beautiful, though beauty was there, sharp and aristocratic, in the angle of her chin and the dark eyes that observed everything with surgical intelligence, but because all the other young ladies floated through the ballroom like ornamental swans, while Isabella Montfort walked as if she owned the ground beneath her feet. The emerald green dress was impeccable, the neckline modest but elegant, her black hair styled to reveal the proud line of her neck. She didn't smile sweetly at the gentleman who greeted her, didn't lower her eyes, didn't feign shyness she clearly didn't feel, and Edmund realized, with something between admiration and despair, that courting this woman would be far more difficult than he'd imagined. He watched as she conversed briefly with Lady Somerset, answering questions politely, but without the effusive enthusiasm other young women displayed. There was a restraint in her, a guard always raised, as if she were present at the ball out of obligation, not pleasure. Edmund waited for the right moment, when she separated from the other ladies and walked toward the terrace to take some air. He followed her, mentally rehearsing words that sounded hollow even to his own ears. How does one declare to a stranger that he needs her fortune to survive? The cold March night wind whipped his face as he stepped onto the terrace. Isabella was leaning against the stone balustrade, looking at the lantern-lit gardens, perfectly aware of his presence, but not deigning to turn around. Miss Montfort, he began, approaching respectfully, maintaining proper distance. Lord Blackwood. She didn't look at him. You took longer than I expected. Edmund stopped completely, disconcerted. Pardon? She finally turned, and those dark eyes pierced him with uncomfortable precision. There was no malice in them, only cold, calculated assessment. Pemberton has been making discreet inquiries about my fortune and marital status for 3 days. He's not exactly a master of subtlety. A cold smile touched her lips. So I presume you're here to make a proposal. Wintermere is in financial trouble, isn't it? £18,000 in debt, I've heard. 60 days until the auction. Edmund's pride burned like live coals. She knew. She knew everything. And she'd let him come here anyway, probably amusing herself with his discomfort. You are extraordinarily well-informed, madam. I always have been. It's an advantage people underestimate in women, thinking we don't pay attention or don't understand business. She tilted her head, studying him as one evaluates an investment. When Pemberton began his investigations, I had my own lawyer research you. Lord Edmund Blackwood, 13th Baron of Wintermere, 32 years old, ancient title, respectable family, no public scandals, magnificent property, but poorly managed for 2 generations. Each word was a precise blade, cutting what remained of his dignity. Edmund felt his hands close into involuntary fists. So, Lord Blackwood, she continued, voice soft but relentless, will you dance around the subject with empty flattery and false courtship? Or do you prefer to be direct? I appreciate honesty. It's so rare among gentlemen. Edmund felt the world narrow around them, just him, her, and the raw truth hanging between them, like a suspended blade. Very well. If she wanted honesty, he would give her honesty. He had nothing left to lose but pride, and that was already in tatters. Very well. Honesty. He straightened his shoulders, meeting those challenging eyes. Wintermere is on the brink of ruin. My father squandered the family fortune on gambling and disastrous investments before he died. I need £18,000 in 60 days, or I'll lose everything. The property, the legacy, everything my family built over 300 years. I came here tonight with the intention of courting you and, eventually, asking for your hand in marriage. Eventually, she repeated, almost amused. As in 3 weeks? 2? Tomorrow? Tomorrow, if you would accept. Isabella gave a low laugh, without humor, but there was something close to approval in her eyes. At least you're honest. That's refreshing, actually. Most gentlemen would have lied, feigned sudden affection, declared admiration from afar. She turned completely to him, crossing her arms. And what would I gain from this arrangement, Lord Blackwood? Besides the dubious honor of saving an impoverished nobleman from his own ruin? Edmund swallowed the pride that threatened to suffocate him. A title, social position, the respectability of marriage. Wintermere is a magnificent property when properly maintained. 50 rooms, 1,000 acres of land, privileged location. With the right investments, it could be profitable again. And He paused, searching for something of value to offer beyond empty promises. Would be a faithful and respectful husband. Faithful and respectful, she echoed, as if testing the words. What impressive generosity! The sarcasm cut deeper than any direct insult. Edmund felt the flush rise up his neck. Miss Montfort, if my proposal is unacceptable. I didn't say it was. She interrupted him, taking a step forward. Her perfume, something expensive with notes of jasmine and bergamot, invaded his senses. But if we're going to do business, Lord Blackwood, let's do it properly, with clear and honest terms from both sides. Terms? I accept to marry you. The words came out firm, without emotion, as if she were closing a business contract. You'll save Wintermere. You'll have access to my fortune to settle your debts and restore the property. In exchange, I receive the title of Lady Blackwood and the respectability you mentioned. Edmund felt relief flood his chest like water after days in the desert, until she continued. But there are non-negotiable conditions. The relief froze in his veins. Of course there would be conditions. What conditions? Isabella raised her chin, those dark eyes fixed on his without blinking, without retreating. First, this will be a marriage without conjugal rights. We'll share residence, but not a bed. Separate rooms, separate lives in that aspect. Edmund felt the world tilt beneath his feet. But an heir? Perhaps one day, if I decide, if and when I'm ready. Until then, you'll have no access to my body. I'm not merchandise that comes included in the transaction. This is non-negotiable. Humiliation burned his throat like bile, but Edmund forced himself to nod. And the second condition? I'll maintain total control over my fortune. Yes, I'll use it to save Wintermere. I'll consider it an investment. But all future financial decisions will go through me. You won't spend a penny without my approval. She crossed her arms, absolute firmness in every line of her body. And I'll have freedom to continue managing my investments and businesses as I always have. I won't be an ornamental doll in your house, Lord Blackwood. I won't be silenced, ignored, or treated as decoration. Isabella. The name escaped before he could contain it. Too intimate for strangers. Miss Montfort, she corrected coldly. You haven't accepted my terms yet. And there's more. Edmund closed his eyes briefly. Of course there's more. I'm listening. Wintermere will be saved, but merely saving isn't enough. The property needs to become self-sustaining, profitable. My father started with a small textile factory and built an empire worth over £100,000. I learned at his feet how to transform loss into profit, how to invest wisely, how to make money work instead of just spending it. Her eyes shone with something that seemed like genuine passion. I've analyzed Wintermere's public records. Excellent lands, strategic location near trade routes. But it's been poorly managed for years. Poor harvests, low rents, wasted opportunities. Edmund wanted to argue, defend his father's management, but he couldn't. Because she was right. With the right investments and proper management, Isabella continued, Wintermere could yield £5,000 a year, perhaps more. But this requires changes, modernization, and someone willing to learn. She stared at him directly. I'll teach you what I know about property management, investments, business management, but you'll have to actually learn, Lord Blackwood, not just nod and ignore because it comes from a woman. Edmund processed this, pride and pragmatism warring within him. A woman teaching him to manage his own ancestral property. His grandmother would be rolling in her grave. But, you would do this? He asked, voice lower. Why? What do you gain besides the title? Something passed through her eyes, ancient frustration, deep weariness, the armor cracking just a fraction. Because I need this marriage as much as you do, Lord Blackwood, just for different reasons. I don't understand. Isabella sighed, turning to the balustrade, looking at the night. When she spoke again, there was bitterness in every word. I'm 25 years old. By society's standards, I should have been married 5 years ago, with at least 2 or 3 children. My family won't stop pressuring me. Uncles, cousins, even friends of my late father, all insist I need a sensible man to guide my decisions. She laughed without humor, as if my own father hadn't taught me every detail of business before he died. As if I hadn't doubled his fortune in the last 2 years through intelligent investments. They want control over your money, Edmund said slowly, understanding. Exactly. My uncle Alfred manages part of the business, the part I still haven't been able to legally claim. He's pressuring me to marry his son, my cousin Gerald, an idiot who lost £3,000 on horses last year. She gripped the balustrade tightly. And the only legal way he has to force me is through a husband. If I keep refusing proposals, he can argue before the courts that I'm emotionally unstable or incapable of rational decisions for refusing so many suitors. And then a judge can appoint a guardian for me, probably my uncle. Edmund felt anger surge, not for himself but for her, for the impossible trap society had created. So you need a husband, but one who won't try to control you. Precisely. She turned to him again. When Pemberton started making inquiries about me, I researched everything about you. Lord Edmund Blackwood, educated at Cambridge, respectable background, never involved in scandals, ancient family without significant stains, and she stared at him directly, without apologizing. desperate enough to accept an agreement most men would consider emasculating. The word cut like a knife, but Edmund couldn't deny the brutal truth in it. "You offer me exactly what I need," Isabella said, voice softer now but no less determined. "A respectable title that will make my family stop pressuring me. The legal protection of a husband that prevents my uncle from assuming control, and a gentleman who won't try to control me because his own survival depends on keeping our agreement." She paused. "In return, you receive not just financial salvation, but real knowledge about how to properly manage Wintermere, how to transform it into something profitable again. It's not charity, Lord Blackwood. It's an investment, and I always ensure returns on my investments." Edmund looked at her. This extraordinary woman society called difficult simply because she refused to pretend to be less intelligent than she was, who was offering not just salvation, but real partnership, knowledge, skill, a chance to truly restore Wintermere, not just save it temporarily. "So we both win," he said slowly, testing the words. "I save Wintermere and learn to manage it properly. You gain freedom, legal protection, and a title that shields you. And neither of us needs to pretend this marriage is something it's not," Isabella completed, raw honesty in every word. "No romantic expectations, no inevitable disappointments. Just a business agreement between two people who respect each other enough to be honest about what they want and what they can offer. It should be cold, it should be horrible, but strangely, there was something almost liberating in this brutal honesty." Edmund looked at her again, really looked, saw not just the armor and walls, but the loneliness hidden behind them, saw a woman fighting for the only thing that should be her right, autonomy over her own life, and he saw that in a twisted way they were equals, both trapped by circumstances, both fighting for survival on whatever terms they could negotiate. "There's one last thing I need to know," Edmund finally said. "Why me? There are other indebted nobles, other available titles. Why accept my proposal so easily?" Isabella tilted her head, considering. "Because I researched, Lord Blackwood. Of the 5 nobles indebted enough to accept my terms, 3 have reputations for domestic violence. One is an alcoholic who spends more time in London brothels than in his own house. And the last one," she paused, "is already married, just hiding it to secure a second fortune." Edmund felt nausea rise. "You," she continued, "have never raised your hand to anyone according to all my sources. You don't drink excessively, don't frequent brothels, don't gamble. Your only vices are books and horses, both relatively harmless. And most importantly, everyone I spoke with said you treat your servants with respect rare among nobility." She stared at him. "So yes, I would easily accept your proposal. Because among all the bad options available, you're the least worst. And because I believe we can have a civilized and mutually beneficial agreement without destroying each other in the process." The least worst. It should be an insult. But Edmund felt something strange, almost gratitude, that at least she saw him as a decent human, albeit desperate. "And if I agree to all your terms," he said carefully, "what happens next? How would this marriage work?" "We'll marry in 2 weeks. Enough time for legal formalities and proper contract. Yes, there will be a detailed, non-negotiable contract. We'll settle your debts immediately. Then we'll start working on Wintermere." Her eyes gleamed. "I have ideas. Modernization of agricultural techniques, renegotiation of leases, perhaps even small manufacturing using the wool from your sheep. There's much wasted potential." Edmund could barely process. 2 weeks, contract, salvation, and a wife who spoke about wool manufacturing with more enthusiasm than any woman he'd known showed for balls. "So?" Isabella turned to him one last time, raising a defiant eyebrow, cold wind stirring the black strands escaping from her hairstyle. "You want me rich, Lord Blackwood. I want myself free. We both get what we need. Do you accept or not?" The wind whipped between them, carrying the jasmine perfume and the weight of a decision that would change both their lives forever. Edmund looked at those challenging eyes and saw what she didn't say, the fear hidden under the armor, the loneliness disguised as strength. The brilliant intelligence forced to hide to survive in a world that punished women for being competent. He saw a woman protecting herself the only way she knew how, building insurmountable walls and negotiating impossible terms because it was the only way to maintain some control. And then he looked within himself and saw a man desperate enough to accept any term, endure any humiliation, sacrifice any pride. But he also saw, for the first time, the possibility of something beyond mere survival. The chance to really learn, to become better, to honor the legacy he carried by doing something his father never did. Manage it with intelligence. "I accept," he said, each word costing his pride but buying his future. "Your terms, all of them." Isabella nodded, as if expecting exactly that answer, but there was something close to relief in her eyes. "Very well. I'll make arrangements with my lawyer tomorrow. The contract will be detailed and binding. Don't try to negotiate the terms afterward. It won't work. We can marry in 2 weeks. Enough time for formalities and proper documentation." 2 weeks, Edmund repeated, voice empty, trying to comprehend that his entire life had just changed on a cold terrace. "Unless you'd prefer to wait and lose Wintermere?" There was challenge in her voice, but also something that could be understanding. "Number 2 weeks is adequate." "Excellent." She extended her hand with purely commercial formality, as if they were closing a deal on stocks or properties. "We have an agreement, Lord Blackwood." Edmund took her gloved hand, feeling the firmness of the grip. There was nothing delicate or submissive in that touch. It was the grip of an equal, of a business partner, or perhaps of 2 prisoners chained together, making peace with their shared destiny. "An agreement," he agreed, releasing her. Isabella passed by him toward the ballroom, then paused at the door, turning one last time. The lantern light illuminated her profile, making her almost ethereal despite the hardness in her words. "One last thing, Lord Blackwood." "Yes?" "Don't delude yourself thinking you can convince me to change my mind about the terms. I'm not a fortress to be conquered with charm or romantic persistence. I'm not a problem to be solved with flattery." Her eyes gleamed dangerously. "I'm a woman who knows exactly what she wants and what she doesn't want. Respect that and we'll have a civilized agreement. Disrespect it." She left the threat hanging. "And you'll discover I can make your life as miserable as any creditor ever could. Remember that." She disappeared into the ballroom, leaving Edmund alone on the cold terrace, with the feeling he'd just made a pact with someone simultaneously more dangerous and more honest than anyone he'd ever met. But at least Wintermere would be saved, and perhaps, just perhaps, he would learn something in the process, even if it cost all his pride. Edmund leaned against the balustrade where she'd been moments before, the jasmine perfume still lingering in the frozen air, and allowed himself a single moment of honest despair. Then he straightened his shoulders, adjusted his tie, and returned to the ball with a carefully neutral face. After all, he was a Blackwood. And Blackwoods didn't crumble in public. They crumbled in private, where no one needed to witness the ruin. Or in this case, where no one needed to see the relief mixed with terror of a man who had just sold his autonomy to save his legacy. And he wondered, while accepting a glass of champagne from a servant, if Isabella Montfort felt the same. Relief and terror intertwined, salvation and prison in the same agreement. Probably yes, he realized. After all, she was as trapped as he was, just in different cages. Edmund didn't sleep that night. He stayed in Wintermere's library until dawn, looking at the contract Isabella's lawyer had delivered that afternoon. 23 pages of detailed terms, clauses about finances, property, conjugal rights, or the lack thereof. Each word carefully chosen to protect Isabella and limit Edmund. He should feel anger, humiliation, but all he felt was a profound weariness and the inevitable certainty that there was no other choice. He signed at dawn, the ink still wet when Pemberton took it away. The following 2 weeks passed in bureaucratic fog. Documents, arrangements, formal announcement of the engagement that made London matrons whisper with poorly disguised scandal. The Montfort heiress finally accepted someone, and precisely the impoverished Blackwood. How convenient. Edmund saw Isabella only 3 times before the wedding, always with chaperones, always formal, always discussing practical terms. She never smiled. Neither did he. The ceremony was small, held in Wintermere's chapel on a gray April morning. 12 witnesses, no close family from either side. Isabella wore a light blue dress, simple but elegant. Edmund, his best suit that no longer fit perfectly. He'd lost weight in recent weeks. The vicar recited the traditional vows with a voice that trembled slightly, as if sensing the ice between groom and bride. "Do you take this woman?" Edmund said, "I do," looking not at Isabella, but at the stained glass behind her. "Do you take this man?" Isabella said, "I do," with the same intonation she would use to confirm a banking transaction. The moment to sign the marriage register arrived. Edmund picked up the pen, aware of Isabella beside him. Their hands touched briefly when she took the pen from him. Just 1 second. Lace gloves against bare skin. Electricity shot through Edmund's arm. Isabella felt it too, her eyes widening a fraction before quickly looking away. The first and only real touch between them. "You may kiss the bride," the vicar announced, uncomfortable. Edmund turned to Isabella. She raised her face with a carefully neutral expression. He leaned in, pressing his lips against hers for exactly 2 seconds. Cold, formal, devoid of any warmth or promise. When they pulled apart, her eyes shone with something that could be relief or disappointment. Edmund couldn't decipher it. "Lady Blackwood," he murmured. "Lord Blackwood," she responded, and it was done. The first night at Wintermere, Isabella went directly to the blue room in the east corridor, the farthest from the master bedroom. Edmund stayed in the library until late, drinking cognac that didn't warm him, listening to her footsteps above finally cease. The following weeks established a painful pattern: breakfast at 8, polite conversations about weather and estate matters. Isabella disappeared into the study Edmund had ceded to her, diving into account books and correspondence. Dinners at 7, more polite silence. Then, separation to distinct rooms, parallel lives under the same roof, shared loneliness that hurt more than true loneliness. Edmund was beginning to understand that he'd saved Wintermere, but lost something he didn't even know he needed: human connection. And looking at Isabella across the dinner table, so close physically, so infinitely distant in all other aspects, he suspected she felt exactly the same. 2 married strangers, 2 different prisons. A silence that screamed louder than any words. Edmund found the letters by accident. 3 weeks after the wedding, he was looking for a book on crop rotation in the library when a pile of papers slipped from Isabella's desk. He bent down to collect them and froze upon seeing the childish handwriting. "Dear Lady Benefat, good lady, thank you for the new boots. My feet don't hurt anymore when it snows. Your friend, Molly, 7 years old." Edmund picked up another letter. And another. Dozens of them, written in trembling hands of children learning to write. All addressed to Secret Angel or Kind Lady or simply Our Savior. He shouldn't read them. He knew that. But he couldn't stop. "Thanks to you I got into school. The teacher says I'm good with numbers. Maybe one day I'll work in a real bank, not just cleaning the floors. The orphanage food has improved a lot. Now we have meat twice a week. Nobody knows who pays, but I know it's you. God bless you." Banking documents mixed with the letters showed the cold truth. Isabella had invested more than £15,000 in the last 2 years. Orphanages in London, Manchester, Birmingham. Schools for poor girls. Apprenticeship programs for young people without families. £15,000. Almost enough to save Wintermere. And she had chosen to save anonymous children. "You've discovered my secret." Edmund turned abruptly. Isabella stood in the library doorway, face pale but chin raised, defiant even when caught. The fireplace light danced on her profile, making her less formidable, more human. "I didn't mean to." The letters fell and... Edmund stopped, realizing excuses sounded hollow. "Forgive me. I shouldn't have read them." "No, you shouldn't have." She entered, closing the door behind her. When she spoke again, there was weariness in her voice. "But since you've read them, I suppose you have questions." "Why hide it?" Isabella laughed without humor, approaching the fireplace. "Because society finds it charming when women do superficial charity, Christmas baskets, charity balls where we spend more on decoration than we donate. But investing real fortunes in education for the poor?" She stared at him. "That's radical, dangerous. It shows we take these people seriously, that we believe orphan girls deserve real chances, not just crumbs of pity." Edmund looked at the letters in his hands, small pieces of paper that represented changed lives. £15,000. 17, actually. "There are 2 new orphanages in Bristol the letters don't mention yet." She crossed her arms, defensive. "Are you going to judge me for this? Say I should have saved it for emergencies? That charity is wasteful?" "No." Edmund carefully placed the letters on the table. "I'm going to say you're not who I thought you were." Something wavered in her eyes. "And who did you think I was?" "A cold woman, calculating, who saw everything as transactions and numbers." He approached, maintaining respectful distance, but finally looking at her, really looking. "But these letters, they show someone who cares deeply, who chooses to make a real difference even when no one knows." "No one is ever just one thing, Lord Blackwood." Isabella turned to the flames, voice softer. "I can be good with numbers and still have a heart. I can protect my freedom fiercely and still care about those who have no freedom at all." Edmund felt remorse squeeze his chest. How many times had he judged her in recent weeks? How many times had he sat at the table thinking he'd married a woman without soul, incapable of affection? "Molly is 7 years old," he said, remembering the first letter. "The age of my sister when she died of fever." Isabella looked at him, surprised by the personal sharing. "I didn't know you had a sister." "Catherine, 20 years ago. But I still remember her laughter." Edmund picked up one of the letters again. "If she'd lived, she would be terrified by our financial situation. She always cared so much about others." Silence weighed between them, but different from the usual silence. This one had weight, texture, hesitant sharing. "Why schools for girls specifically?" Edmund asked. Isabella hesitated then. "Because no one else invests in them. Poor boys have some options, apprenticeships, manual labor. Girls? Domestic service if they're lucky, prostitution if they're not. Education could change that, could give them choices." "As they gave you." "My father was unusual. He taught me as he would teach a son." Old pain crossed her face. "But he died, and suddenly my family decided an educated woman is an aberration. That I should shut up, marry, disappear conveniently." She hugged her arms around herself. "These girls deserve better. Deserve the chances I had, but that society wants to deny them." Edmund saw then, not just the woman who had negotiated marriage as a transaction, but the person behind the armor. Someone wounded by loss, fighting against a world that limited her, channeling pain into purpose. "You're extraordinary," he said softly. Isabella stared at him. Automatic distrust. "Don't flatter me." "It's not flattery. It's observation." Edmund gestured to the letters. "How many people with your fortune would do this? Really do it, not just talk about doing it. I'm no saint. I do it because I can. Because—" her voice broke slightly. "Because no one saved my mother when she needed it. She died in childbirth of my stillborn sister, because the midwife was incompetent and my father didn't have money for a proper doctor then. He made his fortune later, but too late." Edmund felt his heart squeeze. "Isabella." "So yes, I invest in orphanages and schools. Because I know what it is to lose. I know what it is to feel powerless." She quickly wiped her eyes, as if ashamed of the emotion. "And if I can change that for some children, even if society thinks it's radical, I will. I always will." Edmund took a step forward, then stopped, remembering the terms. No touch, no intimacy. But he wanted, for the first time since the wedding, wanted to embrace her, comfort her, say he now saw who she really was. "No one ever is, Lord Blackwood," she repeated, composing herself. never just what they appear. "Edmund," he said impulsively. "Pardon? My name. Edmund. Not Lord Blackwood when we're alone." He offered something that could be peace, or the beginning of something different from the cold silence of recent weeks. Isabella considered, then nodded minimally. "Then call me Isabella." Not Miss Montfort or Lady Blackwood, just Isabella. Isabella, he tested, and the name sounded different now, less formal, more real. She took the letters from him, storing them carefully. "Will you keep my secret? You don't need to worry about that." "Why?" "You could use it against me, spread that I spend fortunes on radical charity." Edmund held her gaze. "Because it's not a shameful secret. It's an honor. And because," he paused, "because perhaps I'm also not just what you thought." "And what did I think? A useless nobleman who ruined the property and needed to be saved by a more competent woman." Isabella almost smiled. Almost. "Well, that part is true. Yes, but perhaps I can learn. Perhaps." Edmund looked around the library. "Perhaps we can be more than strangers under the same roof." "I'm not changing the terms," she said quickly, fear crossing her face. "I'm not asking, just how to explain what he barely understood. Friendship, perhaps, real respect, not just the contract term." Isabella studied him for a long time, looking for traps, finding only weary sincerity. "Perhaps," she finally agreed. "Perhaps we can try that." It wasn't love. Not even close. But it was a crack in the ice, and sometimes cracks are how everything begins. The dinner at the Hartley residence, 2 weeks after discovering Isabella's letters, was an important event of the season. 30 guests, conversations about politics and business, exactly the kind of occasion Edmund used to dread since the financial ruin. But tonight was different. Isabella was beside him. Bordeaux satin dress, politely conversing with Lady Hartley about textile market trends. He noticed how other men observed her, part admiration, part discomfort with a woman who spoke of business with such propriety. It was during the second course that Lord Ashton, an enriched merchant with old opinions, decided to share his unsolicited wisdom. "I hear Lady Blackwood manages her own finances," he commented loud enough for the entire table to hear, condescending smile on his lips. "How modern. Though I don't envy your delicate position, Blackwood. Women and numbers rarely mix well. My own wife can't even balance the household expense book." Discreet laughter around the table. Isabella remained still, face carefully neutral, but Edmund saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers tightened on the fork. How many times had she heard this? How many times had she been diminished, ridiculed, for simply being competent? Edmund felt anger burn in his chest, not for his humiliation, but for hers. "Interesting observation, Lord Ashton," he said, voice calm but cutting. The hall silenced. "Since my wife doubled the fortune she inherited in just 2 years through strategic investments, while I hear you lost £12,000 last quarter trying to monopolize the wheat market, unsuccessfully." Ashton paled. Some women hid smiles behind their fans. "Moreover," Edmund continued, turning slightly to Isabella with genuine respect in every word, "my wife possesses a sharper mind for business than any gentleman in this room, including myself, and I'm not ashamed to admit it." The silence was absolute now. Isabella stared at him, eyes wide with genuine shock. Edmund didn't stop. If he was going to do this, he'd do it completely. "In fact, I was waiting for the appropriate moment to discuss this publicly." He looked around the table, finding curious and some disapproving eyes. "Wintermere is being financially reorganized, and all investment decisions go through Lady Blackwood. Not because I'm obligated by contract, but because I trust her judgment more than my own." "Blackwood," Lord Hartley intervened, evident discomfort. "Surely you don't need to." "I do, yes," Edmund interrupted, then softened his tone. "Forgive my frankness, but I believe it's important to clarify. There are those who think my marriage was embarrassing, that marrying a woman who manages her own fortune is a sign of weakness." He took Isabella's hand on the table. First time he'd touched her intentionally since the wedding. She didn't pull away, just watched him as if trying to decipher a puzzle. "But the truth is, I have extraordinary luck," Edmund said, lightly squeezing those trembling fingers. "I married a woman who not only saved Windermere from ruin, but is teaching me how to manage it properly, how to make intelligent choices, how to transform a decadent property into something prosperous again." He turned completely to her, now ignoring the other guests. "So, Lady Blackwood, since we have respectable witnesses here." A small smile touched his lips. "I'd like your opinion on the investment we discussed. The new mills Lord Pemberton mentioned. Worth investigating?" Isabella blinked, processing. He was genuinely asking her advice, in front of everyone, publicly acknowledging her authority. She cleared her throat, composing herself. When she spoke again, there was strength in her voice. "The mills have potential, but Pemberton overestimates the return. I suggest negotiating a 40% stake, not the 30% he's offering, and including an exit clause if production falls below specific levels in the first year." "See?" Edmund looked at Lord Ashton, eyebrow raised. "Precise analysis in seconds. It took me 3 days studying the same documents, and I didn't identify those risks." "Because you weren't properly trained," Isabella said softly, then seemed surprised by her own words, as if she didn't expect to also defend him publicly. "Exactly. But I'm learning." Edmund released her hand, aware that prolonged touch would violate the terms. But the message was sent. With the best possible teacher. The dinner continued in a strange atmosphere. Some guests clearly disapproved, others seemed thoughtful. But Edmund didn't care, because when he risked looking at Isabella again, he saw something he didn't expect. Gratitude. And perhaps, just perhaps, the beginning of something that could be real respect. Not love. Not yet, but another genuine crack in those impossible walls. And Edmund realized it was worth every second of social discomfort, because for the first time since the wedding, Isabella looked at him as a person, not as a necessity, not as a transaction, as someone who might be worth knowing. Edmund discovered by accident 3 weeks after the dinner. He found Isabella in the study at 2 a.m, still dressed, surrounded by letters and documents, her eyes red but dry. She didn't cry, probably never allowed herself that. "Isabella." He entered hesitantly. "Is everything all right?" She raised her face, exhausted. "The Manchester orphanage. St. Agnes, it's going to close." Edmund sat in the opposite chair, waiting. Accumulated debts. The building owner sold to a speculator who wants to demolish and build a factory. Her voice was controlled, but Edmund heard the pain underneath. 53 children. I have nowhere to send them. The other orphanages are full. "How much?" Edmund asked. £5,000. To buy the building and settle operational debts. She passed her hands over her face. "I don't have it liquid now. I invested heavily in the mills we discussed. It would take 2 months to liquidate without significant losses. And they have 3 weeks. Edmund saw the despair she tried to hide, the scattered letters, all from St. Agnes. "Thank you for the hot soup. Miss Martha taught us to read. I'm not afraid of the dark anymore because I know you care. 53 children, 3 weeks. I'm going to sleep," Isabella said, rising stiffly. "Maybe in the morning I'll find a solution." But Edmund saw she didn't believe that. In the following 3 days, he worked in silence, visited discreet jewelers in London, antique collectors, auctioneers who did private business. The great-grandmother's gold locket, gift from King George III, sold for £800. The great-grandfather's sword collection, including a 16th-century piece, $1,200. The Chinese porcelain dinner service, 120 pieces, $900. The solid silver candelabras from the hall, $700. The grandfather's pocket watch, the only personal gift his father had given him, $400. Each sale hurt like tearing pieces of himself. 300 years of family history disappearing in cold transactions. The locket especially. His mother used to let him hold it as a child, telling stories about the great-grandmother who'd met kings, But whenever he hesitated, he thought of those letters. I'm not afraid of the dark anymore because I know you care. 53 children were worth more than gold and porcelain, worth more than his pride. He managed £5,300 in a week, transferred anonymously to St. Agnes through an intermediary bank, instructing them not to reveal the source. He returned to Windermere exhausted, the empty display case where the locket had been seeming to accuse him. Isabella noticed 3 weeks later. Edmund was in the library when she entered, letter in hand, face pale. St. Agnes was saved, she said, voice strange. Someone paid everything, anonymously. Edmund continued reading, forcing naturalness. How wonderful. See? There are good people in the world. Edmund. Something in the tone made him look up. Isabella was holding another letter. The jeweler mentioned casually to Pemberton that you sold the locket. He was impressed you accepted such a low price for a quick sale. Silence filled the library like rising water. And then I noticed, she continued, voice trembling now, that the display case is empty. The candelabras disappeared. The porcelain service we used for formal dinners, replaced by a simpler one. Edmund slowly closed the book. There was no point in denying. Why? The question came out as a broken whisper. Why would you do this? He stood, approaching cautiously. Because it mattered to you. But they were family heirlooms. 300 years of Blackwood history. You... Tears finally escaped. You sold the locket. Your father gave you that watch. And you saved all of Windermere, Edmund said softly. Invested a fortune in a property that wasn't yours. Why is it different? Because I had the money. You. She furiously wiped her eyes, as if ashamed of the emotion. You sacrificed pieces of your heritage. Irreplaceable things. Edmund took another step, stopping inches from her. Isabella, look at me. She reluctantly obeyed, those dark eyes swimming in tears. Those objects were beautiful, valuable, full of history, he said, each word loaded with truth. But they were just things, cold, lifeless. He gestured to the letter about St. Agnes. 53 children aren't things, they're lives, futures, and if I have to choose between dead gold and living hope. He smiled softly. I'll always choose hope. But you barely know me, Isabella whispered. Why would you care about my projects? Because you care. And because. Edmund hesitated, then decided on honesty. Because in 3 months of marriage, I've learned more about real honor from you than in 32 years, watching men discourse about it. You don't just talk about doing good, you do it. And that's extraordinary. Isabella covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. Edmund stood still, wanting to comfort her, but remembering the terms. No touch, no intimacy, but then she took the step he couldn't take. Isabella threw herself into his arms, sobbing against his chest. No one ever. Edmund carefully wrapped her, as if holding something precious and fragile. I know, but now someone has. And there, in Windermere's silent library, surrounded by old books and heavy history, something fundamentally changed between them. It wasn't love yet, but it was the moment Isabella Montfort realized Edmund Blackwood didn't just respect her. He saw her and valued her dreams above his own pride. The lawyers arrived on a June morning, smiling like sharks that had sensed blood in the water. Lord Blackwood, the older one began, opening a leather briefcase. We've discovered something interesting about your prenuptial contract. Edmund looked at Pemberton, confused. Isabella was traveling in London for 3 days, visiting her orphanages. The timing was no coincidence, a legal technicality. The lawyer continued, spreading documents. The clause about financial control was poorly worded. According to matrimonial property law, you have the legal right to assume total administration of Lady Blackwood's fortune. The contract can be annulled. Edmund felt the air escape his lungs. Annulled? Completely. It would restore your traditional conjugal rights, including control over all her assets. The man pushed a document across the table. We've prepared the paperwork. Just sign here, and everything Lady Blackwood possesses legally belongs to you. Edmund picked up the paper, hands trembling. 50,000 pounds, orphanages, investments, everything under his control with one signature. Naturally, the lawyer added, this also invalidates the clauses about, well, conjugal rights. You would have complete authority as a husband, complete authority over her money, over her body, over her life. Everything Isabella had fought to avoid, handed to him on a legal technicality. Edmund looked at those men, respectable, competent, thinking they were doing him a favor. Who requested this investigation? He asked coldly. We took the liberty, my lord. We thought you'd like to know about your rights. My rights. Edmund stood abruptly. Gentlemen, I appreciate the initiative, but no. Pardon? No. He picked up the document, feeling its weight. The weight of 300 years of men controlling women through legal loopholes. I'm not going to sign this. But, my lord, this would give you power over my wife that she explicitly didn't want me to have. Edmund looked at Pemberton. When does Isabella return? Tomorrow evening. Excellent. I'll be waiting. The lawyers left confused. Edmund remained alone with that poisonous document. Isabella arrived exhausted the next evening, carrying reports. Edmund waited for her in her study. Document on the table, another paper beside it. Edmund? She entered cautiously, noting the tension. Did something happen? Sit down. Please. Isabella obeyed, eyes fixed on the papers. He saw the moment she recognized the legal text. All blood drained from her face. They said that. Her voice failed. That you can annul it? They can. Technicality in the wording. Edmund pushed the document to her. One signature and I have total control over everything that's yours. Isabella gripped the table, knuckles white. Edmund saw raw panic in her eyes, the terror of losing everything she'd fought to protect. So you came to inform me you're going to do this, she said, voice dead. No. Edmund picked up the second document. I came to show you what I'm really going to do. In front of her, slowly and deliberately, he tore the annulment document. Once, twice, 3 times. Pieces of paper falling like snow between them. Isabella just stared at him, mouth open, unable to process. And more, Edmund continued, picking up the other paper. This is my new will. Rewritten yesterday. If I die, everything I own passes to you. Without restrictions. Without conditions. Without male guardians or administrators. Just you, with total freedom. Why? The question came out broken. Edmund knelt in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. Because your freedom wasn't a bargain, Isabella. It wasn't something you traded for saving Wintermere. He held her trembling hands. It was your right. Always has been. And no legal technicality, no power society gives me, will change that. Tears streamed down her face now, silent and unstoppable. No man ever... She could barely breathe. No man ever gave up power over me. Everyone wanted more. Always more. Then everyone was a fool. Edmund squeezed those hands. Because what you offer freely, your intelligence, your passion, your purpose, is worth infinitely more than anything I could take by force. Isabella pulled her hands away, covering her face as she sobbed. Edmund remained kneeling, waiting, offering presents without demanding anything. When she finally looked again, there was something different in her eyes. Not love yet, but trust, real, deep, earned. Thank you, she whispered. Always, he promised. And he knew, kneeling before her with torn paper between them, that he just made the most important choice of his life. Not to take power, but to honor the person who deserved freedom. The storm arrived without warning on a July night, transforming the sky into a fury of lightning and thunder that shook Wintermere's windows. Edmund was in the library when he heard the scream. He ran through the corridors, finding Isabella's bedroom door ajar. She was curled up on the bed, hands over her ears, trembling violently with each thunder. Isabella? He entered hesitantly. He'd never been in her room. Another thunder tore through the night. She curled up more, a moan escaping. Edmund didn't think, just acted. He sat on the edge of the bed. "May I stay?" She nodded, unable to speak. "Storms," he said softly, filling the silence between thunderclaps with words. "My sister Catherine was also afraid. I used to tell her stories to distract her." "Please," Isabella whispered. So Edmund told. Stories of Wintermere, of the great-grandfather who planted the oaks that still lined the entrance, of the grandmother who hid jewels during a French invasion that never came, of the eccentric uncle who insisted ghosts played chess in the North Tower. His voice filled the spaces between thunder, an anchor in chaos. Gradually, Isabella stopped trembling so much. Then, hesitant, she rested her head on his shoulder. Edmund froze, then relaxed, continuing the story. Hours passed. The storm furious, then just persistent. Edmund kept talking, about the first time he rode alone, about the lake where he learned to swim, about every corner of Wintermere he loved. "Why are you doing this?" Isabella asked in the darkness, voice hoarse. "Because you're afraid, and because I can help. You don't have to. The contract doesn't require—" "It's not about the contract." Edmund carefully shifted, making her more comfortable against him. "I came to this marriage seeking fortune, desperate to save stones and titles." He paused, feeling the truth of the next words. "But I found something I didn't know I'd lost." "What?" "Purpose, company, someone who challenges me to be better." He looked down, seeing only the top of her head. "Someone who's worth more than any fortune." Isabella didn't respond, but he felt tears moistening his shirt. "When I was 19, she finally whispered, I fell in love. Charles Whitmore. He promised marriage, said he admired my intelligence, that I was different. Edmund heard the beginning of something painful, until my father died and I inherited. Then Charles revealed plans he'd made with my uncle. They'd marry, he'd assume control of the fortune, invest in risky schemes." Her voice hardened. "When I refused, he spread rumors, said I was cold, impossible, that no man could stand me. He built the reputation that's followed me ever since." Isabella. "It was on a stormy night I discovered it. I heard him and my uncle planning in my father's study, thinking I was asleep." She trembled. "Since then, storms remind me of that night, of how foolish I was to trust." Edmund understood then, not just fear of thunder, but trauma of betrayal, of discovering that love was a lie. "Charles was a fool," he said firmly, "because you're worth being loved for who you are, not for what you possess." She raised her face, eyes shining in the dimness. "How can I know that you can't?" "Not yet." Brutal honesty. "But I can prove it, day after day, choice after choice, until you have no more doubts." Isabella studied him, then lowered her head again on his shoulder. "Stay, just until the storm passes, as long as you need." She fell asleep like that, curled against him, breathing finally calm. Edmund remained still, holding her, feeling her weight, not just physical, but emotional, the trust that had cost her so much to offer. And when the first ray of sunlight pierced the curtains, Isabella woke slowly, still in his arms. Their eyes met, and she knew. She was falling in love with Edmund Blackwood, terrifying, wonderful, inevitable. The letter arrived on an ordinary morning, cream envelope with red seal, delicate feminine handwriting. Edmund opened it distracted during breakfast, then froze reading the first lines. "Dear Edmund, I heard of your marriage. What a pity it couldn't be us. But if you ever need consolation from someone who truly knows you, know that I think of you. Fondly, Lady Margaret Ashford." Isabella was reading the newspaper on the other side of the table. She didn't see the letter, but she saw when Edmund crumpled it abruptly, face tense. "Bad news?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Nothing important." He stored the paper in his pocket. But in the following days, Isabella noticed subtle changes. Edmund quieter, distant looks, and that damned letter she found accidentally when looking for papers in his study. She read every word, feeling something ugly, and burning grow in her chest. Jealousy. Lady Margaret. Offering consolation. Someone who truly knows you. Isabella hated herself for feeling this. They didn't have a real marriage. Didn't have promises beyond the contract. Edmund had every right. But it hurt. God, how it hurt. She found him in the library that evening, the forgotten envelope on the table among account books. "Are you going to accept her invitation?" The words came out sharper than intended. Edmund looked up, confused. "Whose?" "Lady Margaret, the one who offers consolation so generously." Isabella threw the letter on the table. "I presume you know her truly, since she mentions that." Understanding crossed his face. Then something that looked like hope. "You're jealous." "Don't be ridiculous. Isabella crossed her arms defensively. "Just want to know if you plan to accept." "To organize myself appropriately." Edmund stood slowly, picking up the letter. Then, without breaking eye contact, he walked to the fireplace and threw it in the fire. "There is no other, Isabella." He watched the flames consume the paper. "Only you." She felt her heart race dangerously. "But Margaret said—" "Margaret was a suitor 5 years ago, briefly. We ended because I realized she loved my title, not me." He turned completely to her. "And frankly, I haven't thought of her once since we married." "Why not?" Edmund approached, stopping inches away. "Because every time I wake up, I think of you. About how you'll restructure that day's accounts, which orphanage you'll visit, how beautiful you look when you discuss investments with that fierce passion." "Edmund, let me finish." He breathed deeply. "I know I started this for money. That I came desperate, willing to sell myself for Wintermere, and you have every right to never forget that. But somewhere between the storm and today, between learning from you and seeing you save children, between every conversation and every shared silence," his voice broke, "I fell in love with you. Completely, irrevocably." Isabella felt tears burn. "How can I know you're not saying this because you need me? Because I have the money and you test me?" Edmund knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "In any way. Take everything, every penny. Leave me with nothing but empty Wintermere, and I'd still wake up happy beside you. Because you, Isabella Montfort Blackwood, are worth more than any fortune, more than any legacy, more than any damn thing I thought I needed." "Edmund, stand up." "No." He squeezed her hands. "You deserved someone who chose you from the beginning, someone who saw beyond the money to the extraordinary woman you are. I can't go back and be that man on that night on the Somerset Terrace." Tears shone in his eyes. "But I can be that man now. Every day. For the rest of my life. If you let me." Isabella also fell to her knees, framing his face between her hands. "You're an idiot. Probably. Complete idiot for thinking I still see the desperate man on the terrace." She touched her forehead to his. "I see the man who sold heirlooms to save children, who tore up contracts to give me freedom, who held me during a storm without asking for anything in return." "Isabella, I also fell in love, Edmund, and it terrifies me, because if you hurt me, I won't. I swear by everything I am." And there, kneeling on the library floor, hands intertwined, they finally said the truth. Not as a contract, as a promise. 5 days after that night in the library, Isabella entered Edmund's study carrying a sealed envelope. He stood immediately, heart racing. Her expression was serious, almost formal, like that first night on the Somerset Terrace. "Isabella, I need to talk about our agreement." She placed the envelope on the desk. "I'd like to renegotiate the terms." Edmund felt the world collapse. Of course, he'd declared love, exposed himself completely. And now she'd retreat, protecting herself as she always had. "I understand," he said, voice carefully neutral despite the pain tearing through his chest. "What terms would you like to change?" "All of them." Isabella pushed the envelope to him. "Open it." With trembling hands, Edmund opened it. Inside was a new contract, official cream paper, lawyer's seals, completely blank. He raised his eyes, confused. I don't understand. I'm annulling our original contract. Isabella approached, eyes shining with contained emotion. I don't want agreements anymore, Edmund. I don't want terms and clauses and legal protections between us. But I want a real marriage. She held his face between her hands. I want to wake up beside you. I want to discuss Wintermere as true partners. Her voice broke. I want to be your wife for real, in every way. Edmund could barely breathe. Are you sure? You don't have to. I'm sure. For the first time in years, I'm absolutely sure about someone. Isabella smiled through tears. You showed me what it is to be seen, valued, loved for who I am, not what I possess. How could I not love you too? Isabella? The name came out as prayer, adoration, promise. She pulled him down, finding his lips in a kiss that had nothing formal or contained about it. It was hunger, promise, choice. Edmund wrapped her, deepening the kiss, 6 months of restraint finally breaking in a tide of real emotion. When they separated, both were trembling. This time, Isabella whispered against his lips, when I say yes, it's forever. Forever, Edmund agreed. 8 months later, June brought golden sun to Wintermere, transforming the property into something Edmund barely recognized from the dark, decadent place he'd almost lost. The fields undulated with healthy wheat. The mills produced steady profit. Investment Isabella had suggested that proved brilliant. The debts had been settled months ago. And in the East Wing, newly built with honey-colored bricks, the Montfort School for Girls received its first class of 20 students. Edmund sat under the century-old oak in the school garden, surrounded by girls aged 7 to 12, who watched him with fascination as he read. And then the knight told the princess. He paused dramatically, making the children lean forward eagerly. That she didn't need to be saved, because she'd already saved herself. But what about the dragon? A red-haired girl asked. Ah, the dragon. Edmund smiled. The princess negotiated with him. She discovered the dragon was only angry because no one listened to him. So they made an agreement. The dragon would protect the kingdom, and the kingdom would respect him. The girls applauded, satisfied with the ending where everyone won. That story is much better than the others, another girl declared. The princesses don't just wait. Never wait, girls, Edmund said, closing the book. The best stories are those where everyone chooses to be brave. Edmund! Isabella's voice crossed the garden, loaded with affection and light exasperation. They're waiting for you for dinner, and you promised not to be late today. He looked up, and his heart still raced. Still after a year, seeing her. Isabella on the school veranda, light blue muslin dress, hair loose in the wind, one hand resting on the belly that was beginning to round beneath the fabric. 7 months pregnant, and she'd never been more radiant. 5 minutes, he promised, turning to the girls. Tomorrow I'll finish the story of the knight who learned to cook. Laughter and protests, but the girls ran to their arithmetic classes. Edmund walked to Isabella, who waited with a smile that still completely disarmed him. You're spoiling the girls, she accused without real censure. I'm educating, he corrected, offering his arm. There's a difference. Telling stories about princesses who negotiate with dragons, better than waiting for rescue. He guided her along the stone path toward the manor. I learned from the best negotiator I know. Wintermere rose ahead, majestic but welcoming now. Open windows letting in light, meticulously tended gardens, servants who didn't just work but lived there with dignity and fair wages. Another of Isabella's reforms. During dinner, Edmund watched his wife interact with Mrs. Brennan about the week's menu, discuss new leases with Pemberton, laugh at something Mary commented. Isabella hadn't just brought fortune to Wintermere. She'd brought life. Afterward, they walked through the gardens in the soft evening light, hands intertwined, comfortable in silence that was no longer empty, but full of mutual understanding. Happy? Edmund asked, as he frequently did, still needing to confirm she didn't regret it. Isabella rested her head on his shoulder. More than I ever dreamed possible. Even having married a desperate man who needed your money? Especially because of that. She stopped, turning to face him completely, dark eyes shining with emotion. Because you asked each other for the wrong reasons, Edmund. But you stayed for the only right reasons, which are daily choice, earned respect, love that grew not despite our scars, but through them. She touched his face gently. And because every day you choose me, and I choose you, always. Edmund held her hand against his face, turning to kiss the palm. You know what I realized? What? That I came to this marriage thinking I needed to save Windermere. That this was my purpose, my reason. He pulled her closer, careful with the belly between them. But you taught me that legacies aren't made of stones and titles. They're made of choices, of how we treat people, of what world we leave behind. Isabella smiled, tears shining. You're getting philosophical, Lord Blackwood. Your fault, Lady Blackwood. You made me think. He looked around, at the school they'd built together, at restored Windermere, at the prosperous fields. All of this is ours. Not mine, not yours. Ours. Ours, she agreed softly. Edmund slowly lowered himself, kneeling on the soft grass. Isabella gasped when he placed his hands on her belly, looking up with reverence that made her tremble. And soon, he murmured, speaking to both her and the life growing under his hands, we'll be 3. He'll love you, Isabella said, voice thick, running her fingers through his hair. Or she will grow up knowing a father who respects women, who values intelligence, who knows real fortune isn't in vaults. We'll know a mother who changes the world, Edmund added, pressing a gentle kiss to her belly, who saves children, who's braver than any knight in stories. He felt movement under his hands. Small kick, life responding. Did you feel that? Isabella laughed, wonder and joy mixed. I felt it. Edmund stood, pulling her into a careful embrace, wrapping her completely. Our child, our beginning. They remained like that as the sun descended, painting Windermere gold and pink. 2 hearts that began with cold transaction, but found true warmth. This time, Edmund whispered against her hair, when I said yes, it was forever. Forever, Isabella agreed, holding him tighter. And in Windermere, under English sky transforming into a veil of stars, the lord who'd almost lost everything and the heiress who'd almost locked herself away forever, finally rested, complete, chosen, loved, and with an entire future shining ahead, not built on contracts and terms, but on daily choices of honor, respect, and love that had proven to be the worthiest price of all.